It is my pleasure to welcome you all. Thank you so much for joining us today in this webinar hosted by the Urantia Association's Education Committee. I want to share with you a quick protocol. During the meeting, we ask you please mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid disturbing background noises. If you want to speak, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. Please use the chat only for webinar-related questions. And if you can, please use headphones to reduce echo background noises when speaking. And please do not type when your microphone is unmuted because we all will hear. This session will be recorded for future study purpose use. The videos will be made available to the public in the Urantia Association YouTube channel. If you do not like your image being used for records, please turn off your camera and ask to speak off the record at any time when you do not want your say to be part of the video. This way, your part will be cut out of the video during editing. Today, we have the participation of Susan Lyon, who is presenting the theme, Finding Your Niche, Serving with the Master Seraphim. Susan is a graphic artist and poet. Having found the Urantia Book in 1978, she has hosted study groups in her home over many years and lately hosts a virtual group with her husband, Rick, who is also a long-time student of the book. Rick and Susan are involved in serving the Urantia community through their online store, cosmiccreations.biz, appearances at Urantia-related events throughout the year, and more recently have focused primarily on publishing secondary works based upon the Urantia Book. Susan currently serves as membership chair for Greater Lake Michigan Urantia Association and maintains their website. Susan and Rick became friends in 2006 and married in 2016. Both find joy in doing the father's works together and spending time with their large blended family. Thank you, dear Susan, for your willingness to serve. The session is yours.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for inviting me to do this webinar today. And welcome, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now with you. And please forgive our little puppy. Finding your niche, serving with the Master Seraphim. This idea came to me recently when we were in study group speaking about the tasks of the Master Seraphim. And I thought this would be an interesting topic of study. Hopefully you'll find it interesting as well. Welcome to everyone. And I'm going to give a brief introduction here of the early concept, but we'll get into discussion hopefully later when we get to the groups of the Seraphim themselves. So niche, this was a new word for me, and it really seemed to fit very well the concept that I was trying to seek for us to identify with. Why find your niche? The Urantia Book reveals that there are 12 groups of Master Seraphim working diligently in very specific fields of endeavor for the welfare and benefit of our world. We all have likely sought the assistance of the angels at one time or another, but is there something we might do for them? And that's been a concept that I've felt that is important. I'm reminded of what John F. Kennedy said, you know, it's not about what can your country do for you, but what can you do for your country? Well, I feel that way about the Seraphim as well. What can we do for them? And I think our willingness to participate and cooperate is important to state or to like put in a personal way to them, instead of just thinking it through, but actually making that statement that we're consecrating ourselves to help in whatever way they wish and whatever project they put before us. So we'll explore the service projects that the Master Seraphim are currently engaged in on Urantia, and then allow each person time to examine the unique passions that drive them as individual mortals. These passions will lead them to relate with one or more of the seraphic groups, hopefully. Identifying with our group and finding our niche of kindred spirits is the first step in becoming more open to the wisdom of the Master Seraphim, more receptive to their suggestions, more committed to action and service, more loyal and dependable in assisting with the progressive tasks at hand, and more aware of the supreme rewards of serving together for the sake of all mankind. Teamwork with kindred spirits multiplies the success of the entire group. Serving with kindred spirits can be very satisfying, personally and spiritually. Welcome to whoever came on board with us. Let's do the math. Mathematics asserts that if one person stands for a certain unit of intellectual and moral value, 10 persons would stand for 10 times this value. But in dealing with human personality, it would be nearer the truth to say that such a personality association is a sum equal to the square of the number of personalities concerned in the equation rather than the simple arithmetical sum. A social group of human beings in coordinated working harmony stands for a force far greater than the simple sum of its parts. So hopefully, not just with the Master Seraphim, but with the kindred spirit groups that form to work with them, it can be a very powerful force for good in our world. Spirit gravity pull and response thereto operate not only on the universe as a whole, but also even between individuals and groups of individuals. There is a spiritual cohesiveness among the spiritual and spiritized personalities of any world, race, nation, or believing group of individuals. There is a direct attractiveness of a spirit nature between spiritually minded persons of like tastes and longings. The term kindred spirits is not wholly a figure of speech. The fact of the cosmic mind explains the kinship of various types of human and superhuman minds. Not only are kindred spirits attracted to each other, but kindred minds are also very fraternal and inclined toward cooperation, the one with the other. Human minds are sometimes observed to be running in channels of astonishingly similarity and inexplicable agreement. A niche, what exactly is a niche? A niche in the market is a specific area of marketing which has its own particular requirements, customers, and products. But this concept can be applied to our planetary activities as well. Niche is a place, employment status, or activity for which a person or thing is best fitted, a specialized market. Your niche is the job or activity which is exactly suitable for you. Finding your niche is an important step in achieving success. The more you niche, the easier it is to provide value to a specific audience, service, or cause. You can choose and prioritize your causes over a lifetime. This ensures effective service with minimal risk of spiritual fatigue. 5 steps you can use to find your niche. If you're struggling to decide or you need more data to work with, use the following 5 steps to find your niche. A lot of you probably are long-time readers and you probably already figure where you belong. But in case you haven't figured it out, identify your interests and passions. This may be something you've already done. Focus on a passion to find your niche. Take quick notes as we go through and discuss. I think they'll help you later identify where you belong. Identify problems you can solve. Research your coworkers. How are others serving? This is called benchmarking, and it can be very helpful in finding tasks that are already in progress that you might help with. You know, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If you have new ideas, it's good to share ideas. Cross-fertilization of ideas is a huge step in being successful. Determine the goals and potential benefits of your niche, and test your ideas with trusted friends and mentors. You will learn you can do important work. You increase your burdens and decrease the likelihood of success by taking yourself too seriously. Nothing can take precedence over the work of your stratosphere, this world or the next. Very important is the work of preparation for the next higher sphere, but nothing equals the importance of the work of the world in which you are actually living. But though the work is important, the self is not. When you feel important, you lose energy to the wear and tear of ego dignity, so that there is little energy left to do the work. Self-importance, not work importance, exhausts immature creatures. It is the self element that exhausts, not the effort to achieve. You can do important work if you do not become self-important. You can do several things as easily as one if you leave yourself out. Variety is restful. Monotony is what wears and exhausts. I put this quote in because we're going to begin to talk about the possibility of the reserve core of destiny. And I think the important element that I'm going to pull out about the reserve core is the importance of us stating our willingness to cooperate and to find the work that we think we're suited for. The other parts, the elements that individual mortals are chosen from, are beyond our control and really only feed the ego. So I'm not going to go there, but it is important to know that they believe we can do several things as easily as one if we don't get our ego in the way of it. And I thought that was a very important concept. Who are our supervisors? Our planet is a member of an enormous cosmos. We belong to a well-nigh infinite family of worlds, but our sphere is just as precisely administered and just as lovingly fostered as if it were the only inhabited world in all existence. Seraphim function as teachers of men by guiding the footsteps of the human personality into paths of new and progressive experiences. To accept the guidance of a seraphim rarely means attaining a life of ease. In following this leading, you are sure to encounter, and if you have the courage, to traverse the rugged hills of moral choosing and spiritual progress. On Urantia, there are 12 reserve cores of destiny, one for each of the planetary groups of Master Seraphim. These kinship factors are manifest on all levels, for kinship serials exist among non-human personalities as well as among mortal creatures, even between human and superhuman orders. Intelligent beings are vertically related in 12 great groups of 7 major divisions each. The coordination of these uniquely related groups of living beings is probably effected by some not fully comprehended technique of the Supreme Being. Mortals of the realm are chosen for service in the reserve core of destiny on the inhabited worlds. And there are 3 reasons having to do with adjuster capabilities and also our capability of being rehearsed unconsciously. But I think the important thing here that we can actually contribute to and have any determination over is the second criteria, which is wholehearted dedication to some special social, economic, political, spiritual, or other cause, coupled with willingness to serve without human recognition and rewards. The Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision, the 12 cores of the Master Seraphim of Planetary Supervision, are functional on Urantia as follows. And just to let everyone know, I didn't use pictures of angels just because I know some folks don't like to see wings. So you can imagine them. The epochal angels. These angels, the epochal angels, are the angels of the current age, the dispensational group. These celestial ministers are entrusted with the oversight and direction of the affairs of each generation, as they are designed to fit into the mosaic of the age in which they occur. The present core of epochal angels serving on Urantia is the third group, assigned to the planet during the current dispensation. Now, I'm going to open up the discussion about the epochal angels. We'll take maybe 5 minutes to discuss each of these groups, and like for you to offer what types of tasks and work that you think these angels might be doing, and how we might assist them if you know of any particular causes. I put in these two quotes below because I think that it's important when we study these groups that we're careful to preserve the good things that we've accomplished in the past as well. So the prevention of transitional breakdown. Society, honey, would you please read this one, because I'm...
Sure.
Thank you.
The prevention of transitional breakdown. Society is the offspring of age upon age of trial and error. It is what survived the selective adjustments and readjustments in the successive stages of mankind's age-long rise from animal to human levels of planetary status. The great danger to any civilization at any one moment is the threat of breakdown during the time of transition from the established methods of the past to the new and better but untried procedures of the future. Is that it, or you want me to go on? Okay. Man should be unafraid to experiment with the mechanisms of society, but always should these adventures in cultural adjustment be controlled by those who are fully conversant with the history of social evolution. And always should these innovators be counseled by the wisdom of those who have had practical experience in the domains of contemplated social and economic experiment. No great social or economic change should be attempted suddenly. Time is essential to all types of human adjustment, physical, social, or economic. Only moral and spiritual adjustments can be made on the spur of the moment, and even these require passing of time for the full outworking of their material and social repercussions. The ideals of the race are the chief support and assurance during the critical times when civilization is in transit from one level to another.
Thank you. And so my opinion about this is that these angels may be trying to establish awareness of history as well as our goals for the future, and that our awareness of that might help us to stay on course better. Anyone have their hand up that they would like to speak to their impression of these angels and what work they might be doing? You'll have to unmute yourself if you do.
Dave is raising his hand. You can speak, Dave.
When I was preparing for this webinar and reading different papers, this paper, dealing with the seraphic planetary government, I came across a word that you see up here in the very first paragraph that we're looking at, current dispensation. I'm sorry, I'm probably so out of touch with whatever. I don't know what the word dispensation means. So when I was looking at the different material, I kept bumping into that. I didn't know what it was referring to. What is current dispensation? Thank you.
Are you asking what a current dispensation is?
Exactly. I don't know what, when it keeps referring to current dispensation in different areas, what does dispensation mean?
In my opinion, we're in the post-bestowal dispensation right now, since Jesus was here. And I interpret it that way. If anyone has any other ideas, I'd be glad to hear them.
Yeah, I think for me it means like the current age or the current period of time that we're in, where, you know, the current level of society, the current level of our social and moral evolution. I think that's what it means by a current dispensation, I believe. Or like Susan says, you know, we're in the post-bestowal age. So that's the way I would interpret that.
Joy?
I would add that dispensations are related to the revelations that come from divine sons. So there was a dispensation when Lucifer came, you know, and the planetary prince's staff. The next large dispensation was with Adam and Eve, and then the next large. If we would have had like an Avanal Son on a bestowal mission or something like that, there would be a dispensation. And it's when all of the sleeping survivors, or the people who have died since the previous dispensation, are then resurrected by that son. So that's included as well. So I agree, we're in the dispensation of Jesus or Michael, and when before he took off to the mansion worlds, he resurrected everybody all the way back to Adam, who were sleeping. Now there can be special resurrections, and also people can, like on the third period, if they're, you know, if they've reached the third psychic circle, etc., they can resurrect a lot sooner. But so that's what is meant by dispensation.
Thank you, Joy.
Dave, Jesus, Sonia has raised his hand. You can speak.
Actually, that did clarify it for me, because I did see some reference to the idea of
sorry, Dave, sorry. Do you have headphones you can use? Because we have difficulties to hear you clearly. Thank you very much. Dave Jesusonian, do you want to speak?
I'd like to speak.
Please go ahead.
Me, Janet?
Yes, please go ahead, Janet.
Okay, this is in regards to the original question on the, you were asking for opinions or ideas on the apical angels. This time period, I think these guys are on call right now on a planetary level. All over our planet, we've got so much change going on, and it's all happening in such a small amount of time. Just in our lifetimes, we've seen major changes. So I would believe that, you know, these guys are, I don't know what word I want to use, awake, alert, and on call. And if we can help in any way, these guys would definitely be anxious to know that we would be holding the light, our consciousness, whatever the right words I should say, during this time of transition and evolution of, Urantia. Just those were my comments.
I agree. Is there any other comments about that? If you have any ideas later, just jot them down, and we'll have a chance to come back to this again. I'm going to go on to the next group of angels, and and these are the progress angels. These seraphim are entrusted with the task of initiating the evolutionary progress of the successive social ages. They foster the development of the inherent progressive trend of evolutionary creatures. They labor incessantly to make things what they ought to be. The group now on duty is the second to be assigned to the planet. If you'd like.
The religious challenge of this age is to those far-seeing and forward-looking men and women of spiritual insight who will dare to construct a new and appealing philosophy of living out of the enlarged and exquisitely integrated modern concepts of cosmic truth, universe beauty, and divine goodness. Such a new and righteous vision of morality will attract all that is good in the mind of man and challenge that which is best in the human soul. Truth, beauty, and goodness are divine realities. And as man ascends the scale of spiritual living, these supreme qualities of the eternal become increasingly coordinated and unified in God, who is love. Can you not advance in your concept of God's dealing with man to that level where you recognize that the watchword of the universe is progress? Through long ages, the human race has struggled to reach its present position. Throughout all these millenniums, Providence has been working out the plan of progressive evolution. The two thoughts are not opposed in practice, only in man's mistaken concepts. Divine Providence is never arrayed in opposition to true human progress, either temporal or spiritual. Providence is always consistent with the unchanging and perfect nature of the supreme lawmaker.
Thank you. I would invite anyone to make comments at this time. Rick, did you raise your hand? What do we think that the progress angels might be working on in the current dispensation?
Joy is raising her hand.
Sorry. Well, I think it's interesting to note that the angels of progress are the artisans, the celestial artisans, are actually under the supervision of the planetary angels of progress. So it seems to me that the angels of progress, or the progress angels, are involved with our art, you know, like our music and all that. There's a quote on paper 44, section 8, paragraph 1, that says, do you want me to read it? Or sure. I can. It just says, although celestial artisans do not personally work on material planets such as Urantia, they do come from time to time from the headquarters of the system to offer help to the naturally gifted individuals of the mortal races. When thus assigned, these artisans temporarily work under the supervision of the planetary angels of progress. The seraphic hosts cooperate with these artisans in attempting to assist those mortal artists who possess inherent endowments and who also possess adjusters of special and previous experience. So that's sort of interesting.
That is interesting. I would have thought they would have been under the diversion group.
Right, but apparently there's, you know, also, maybe they are also under the diversion group, but apparently the angels of progress are also involved in helping to augment and progress, you know, our art.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it's progressing art, or is the beauty of art contributing to the progress? I mean, do you think the beauty that's contained in our art, and does that contribute to our understanding and desire for beauty?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both ways, probably.
That's interesting.
It foreshadows the finer things, the heavenly things. So I see where it would help us visualize progress and change. Are there any other comments?
John, you're going to speak.
Yeah, I think, although much art I don't understand, but when I do find something, it basically inspires me to vaguely think of what is possible in the future. So I see it as a stimulus for focusing our minds on, I know what the present is, but I yearn for the future realities. So it's hard to explain it, but it's more of an inspirational kind of thing.
Well, I think we all have been touched by, some beautiful song or some beautiful piece of art or some beautiful performance that someone's done and been inspired by that. And I think you're right, John. I think that probably does contribute to our own personal progress and then as a whole to the society. So I think that's an important point, how the artwork does contribute to our progress. Like I don't remember the lady's name now, Janet, or said it contributes both ways.
In preparing this, I ran across a quote, and you're probably familiar with it, that someday there will be a musician that will captivate a nation or perhaps even transform the world. And when you think in terms of one individual making that kind of a difference for progress, it's pretty amazing. And that's a reassurance to anyone that even one person can make a huge difference in improving our world. So never think that just one person, I can't do really anything to make a difference. One person can make a big difference. Are there any other comments? Steve? You have to unmute, Steve.
Nope, you're still muted, Steve.
There you go. Hi. I've thought about the angels of the church and the angels of progress, and it seems to me they are kind of locked in some kind of a divine dance, but I think that the angels of progress are taking the lead, but it's probably 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. I agree with some previous comments about, and of course I've read about the Master Seraphim before we started this, and it's very important to preserve that which is good, but the angels of the church are going to have to learn to tango with the angels of progress, and slowly but surely I think the angels of progress will advance into the ballroom that may one day lead to the worlds of light and life. Hope so.
Well, I have to say that my niche is the angels, the guardians of religion, so the angels of the churches. So I have something that's so funny that you lead into this, because it's coming up right after this. Exactly your thought. Is there another comment? Does anyone else relate to this particular niche of the progress angels?
And yes, is willing to speak. Go ahead, Danielle.
Well, yes, I would like to come back to art. And art is not always the manifestation of beauty. And in our dysfunctional world, many people express their dysfunctional mind through art. It can be music, it can be painting, it can be whatever. And it is important to, I remember, well, many people know that I was working with Musa, and Musa was used to telling me, be careful to what you look at, because what you look at is what it has vibes, and it's important to know that we are going to attract what we send as vibes. And so art, when I look at many pieces of art, sometimes I feel really uncomfortable, and it's not beauty. And and the more we go, and the more I see that we really live on a dysfunctional planet, the more we are confronted to that. And my question is, what is really art following the Urantia book? What is art? That is a question that I'm asking myself, and I'm asking the others. For me, what I know about beauty from the book, it is that it is to put together the human being with God. And that is the ultimate beauty. It's matching together, the mankind and God matching together. And that is the ultimate beauty. For me, it's based on an art of living. But my question is, what is art following what you understand about the description given in the book?
John, you can speak.
That's why in my remarks, I sort of tried to make it clear. It's art to me is what inspires. So I agree that there's much art that is basically very disturbing, reflecting inner images of the artist that are not inspiring in the sense that I mean, but the art that I am inspired by is that which touches my soul. I guess that's the picture I sort of have of it. And but on the other hand, art can be helpful even in the contrast of the ugly, because you certainly are more attuned to what is beautiful.
That's a great concept, that we do appreciate the beautiful when contrasted with what is ugly. I think we should move on to our next one, so we can cover all of our groups. One thing I in response to Steve, I did put this down. When we, the Midwayers, first prepared the summary of Jesus' teachings at Urmia, there arose a disagreement between the Seraphim of the churches and the Seraphim of progress as to the wisdom of including these teachings in the Urantia revelation. Conditions of the 20th century prevailing in both religion and human governments are so different from those prevailing in Jesus' day that it was indeed difficult to adapt the Master's teachings at Urmia to the problems of the kingdom of God and the kingdoms of men, as these world functions are existent in the 20th century. We were never able to formulate a statement of the Master's teachings which was acceptable to both groups of these seraphim of planetary government. Finally, the Melchizedek chairman of the Revelatory Commission appointed a commission of 3 of our number, and these are the Midwayers, to prepare our view of the Master's Urmia teachings as adapted to 20th century religious and political conditions on Urantia. Accordingly, we 3 secondary Midwayers completed such an adaptation of Jesus' teachings, restating his pronouncements as we would apply them to present-day world conditions. And we now present these statements as they stand after having been edited by the Melchizedek chairman of the Revelatory Commission. So during even those times, when they were trying to put together the revelation, these two groups are, as Steve said, they're in this dance of preserving what's good, but forging ahead. So during the psychologically unsettled times of the 20th century, amid the economic upheavals, the moral cross currents, and the sociologic riptides of the cyclonic transitions of a scientific era, thousands upon thousands of men and women have become humanly dislocated. They are anxious, restless, fearful, uncertain, and unsettled as never before in the world's history. They need the consolation and stabilization of sound religion. In the face of unprecedented scientific achievement and mechanical development, there is spiritual stagnation and philosophic chaos. So for me, this quote leads us right into the angels of the churches, the religious guardians. These are the angels of the churches, the earnest contenders for that which is and has been. They endeavor to maintain the ideals of that which has survived for the sake of the safe transit of moral values from one epoch to another. They are the checkmates of the angels of progress, all the while seeking to translate from one generation to another the imperishable values of the old and passing forms into the new and therefore less stabilized patterns of thought and conduct. These angels do contend for spiritual forms, but they are not the source of ultra-sectarianism and meaningless controversial divisions of professed religionists. This core now functioning on Urantia is the fifth, thus to serve.
The inner and the outer worlds have a different set of values. Any civilization is in jeopardy when 3/4 of its youth enter materialistic professions and devote themselves to the pursuit of the sensory activities of the outer world. Devote themselves to the pursuit, I got doubled up there, sorry. Civilization is in danger when youth neglect to interest themselves in ethics, sociology, eugenics, philosophy, the fine arts, religion, and cosmology. But prayer need not always be individual. Group or congregational praying is very effective in that it is highly socializing in its repercussions. When a group engages in community prayer for moral enhancement and spiritual uplift, such devotions are reactive to the individuals composing the group. They are all made better because of participation. Even a whole city or an entire nation can be helped by such prayer devotions. Confession, repentance, and prayer have led individuals, cities, nations, and whole races to mighty efforts to reform and courageous deeds of valorous achievement.
And we're open for comments. Are there any kindred spirits for my religious guardians?
Anyone relate to
Anyone
this niche?
relate? This is my niche.
John.
Well, Susan, we're kindred spirits because this is the niche I found about 4 years ago, and that some of you know of my project with my church and my church family. I woke up one morning after many weeks of debating what service project I should get involved in, and a little small voice said, "You're a church." I've always gone to church because my way of worship is through singing the hymns. I love singing hymns. But I've never been involved with my church other than attending. So over the last 4 years, I've become very active. I've joined the Usher Corps, the Care Guild, the Bible reading, various study and activities. I took it literally that Jesus tells us in order to know a person, you have to get to know them and they have to get to know you. So It's no surprise that I've fallen in love with many of my church family, and I've also opened the way to be more actively sharing in my understanding of the Urantia teachings. I don't need to bring the book, but in every interaction in the church activity, I'm perfectly comfortable sharing the truth that I know, and depending on the person, I will also clearly state where I've found this truth. So this is definitely my niche.
Thank you, John. Dave Jesus-Zonian, I believe you had your hand up.
Rick, you can speak.
Thank you, Jeannie. I wonder which of these angels are inspiring us in this very moment. I mean, the religious group or the guardian angels?
I think they might be all working together.
That's all. I mean, as a team.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joy.
I was wondering that same question. And when I look at the Urantia book, so, I mean, the first three groups of angels they talk about, the epical, meaning the present, the progress, meaning the future, and the angels of the church is kind of meaning the past. The Urantia book really has all three of those, right? It gives us history. It certainly gives us revelation all the way up to the absolutes, and but it also kind of talks about the present dispensation anyway. I mean, you know, the life of Jesus and our own personal religious growth and all that. So I think maybe all three of the angels were, groups of angels were working with the downloading of the fifth epical revelation.
We can be sure that they're working, even though they may have different techniques. We can be sure that they're working together for the same goal for us to progress. Are there any other comments?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I forgot to unmute my microphone the first two times. I identify quite a bit with the religious guardians. My concept of church, though, is that I think in the near future, increasingly, especially youth, are disappointed with church. And the Urantia book is not happy with ecclesiastical authority. And I believe a more personal religious awareness at all times and all places is the new religion, more personal religion. And instead of churches, I foresee possibly there will be home spiritual fellowship groups, family-based, and there'll be the family and the children, mother and father, and they invite friends, relatives who are kindred minds, kindred spirits, and then they study and pray and worship, and that will be the replacement for the organized churches. I don't know how many 100 years that will take, but I see that starting to come about. I don't know if you agree or not.
Well, I think I would agree with that because, you know, that's one of the things a lot of us are trying to do in the Urantia community is to promote the in-home study through study groups. I mean, study groups are, I think, are trying to accomplish exactly what you're saying there is to, one, you know, be the family studying together, the family studying their own personal religion in, you know, in friendship with the people they know and their expanded family of friends. So I think you're right. I think we're seeing the beginnings of that, and hopefully a lot of what we as a group are doing is leading the way on that and promoting the Urantia study groups in their homes and all that. So I think you're right. I think we're seeing that beginning, and the importance of that is only going to get more so, I think.
I hope so.
And Dave, you know, there is hope that the churches, the way they exist, the way they exist right now, we're hoping for a transformation. We've seen some encouraging news from the Church of Latter-day Saints and also the Jehovah's Witnesses that are accepting Urantia Book truths. So we may see not only the establishment, and this will be in later on in the Angels of the Home, working together of increasing the home, encouragement of personal religion and family sharing together in religion, but also the transformation of the churches eventually too, into encouraging personal religion, but also enjoying fellowship.
I agree, Susan. In the Urantia Book on page 966, in the middle there, in the original Urantia Book, it talks about the new evolving cult, what it must be. And it must be based on the home. And they have home in italics here. The only word on the whole the only word on the whole page in italics is home. Very, very important.
Pio has raised his hand. You can speak, Pio, if you want. Pio?
Pio?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I haven't shaved, so I haven't turned on my video. But what the gentleman just said brought to mind that our country was founded on family religion. The Pilgrims came as a religious persecution, and all the I picture the wagon train that was going out west. They didn't have any churches, but they always had the family Bible. And as they were going and dying on the trail, I think our country was founded on tight groups of family religion. And maybe that's the reason why the angels or the midwives decided to choose the United States as the country to spread the fifth epochal revelation. That's my two cents.
Thank you, Pio. Anyone else?
I think if I can just comment on what Pio said, I think that's something that we don't place enough importance on sometimes, is the importance of the father and the mother as the spiritual leaders of the family, and how important it is for them to set the, you know, it talks about the children don't learn from examples, they learn from their loyalty. I don't remember the quote exactly, but, you know, I think when the father and the mother show loyalty to God and their beliefs, that rubs off on children. And, you know, if we're going to make better families or help families become more functional and less dysfunctional, the mother and the father have to be the spiritual leaders and teachers. You know, we talk a lot about creating and training teachers and leaders. And I think a lot of times we think of that as, you know, some big organizational thing. But really the first responsibility, I think, is to be a teacher and leader in our own family, to our own children.
I agree.
Yes, that's right, Rick. One last point, if I may, is we're mostly of the Woodstock generations. You know, many of us used to be hippies, and they went on to the material world, and we raised our children very materially. And I think it's important, like John Hale being very active in his church. I was a lifelong Catholic, and there were many screwy things that really screwed me up. But after I became a reader, I enjoy going occasionally to my cathedral and singing hymns like John says, and the community there praising Jesus and, you know, teaching the gospel and hearing the sermon is very, very more meaningful to me even the rituals of those incense and all that stuff, you know, I take it in stride now, and I understand, and I'm very compassionate to other religions, and the book really helped me appreciate it more. And I'm sure in any church services, the spirit of truth is there. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll go on to the next group. The angels of nation life. These are the angels of the trumpets, directors of the political performances of Urantia national life. It is particularly through the ministry of this seraphic division that the Most Highs rule in the kingdoms of men. The group now functioning in the over-control of international relations is the fourth corps to serve on this planet. The federal government, and this is something taken from Government on a Neighboring Planet, and I felt that they were held up as perhaps something that we could aspire to. The federal government is paternalistic only in the administration of old age pension and in the fostering of genius and creative originality. The state governments are slightly more concerned with the individual citizen, while the local governments are much more paternalistic or socialistic. The city, or some subdivision thereof, concerns itself with such matters as health, sanitation, building regulations, beautification, water supply, lighting, heating, recreation, music, and communication.
Just now, this superior government is planning to establish ambassadorial relations with the inferior peoples. And for the first time, a great religious leader has arisen who advocates the sending of missionaries to the surrounding nations. We fear they are about to make the mistake that so many others have made when they have enforced or have endeavored to force a superior culture and religion upon other races. What a wonderful thing could be done on this world if this continental nation of advanced culture would only go out and bring to itself the best of the neighboring peoples, and then, after educating them, send them back as emissaries of culture to their enlightened, benighted brethren. Of course, if a magisterial son should soon come to this advanced nation, great things could quickly happen on this world.
For this particular group, I included a few more quotes because there seemed to be so much material that was suggested to us. So the first peace group was the family, then the clan, the tribe, and later on the nation, which eventually became the modern territorial state. The fact that the present-day peace groups have long since expanded beyond blood ties to embrace nations is most encouraging, despite the fact that Urantia nations are still spending vast sums on war preparations. So this seemed encouraging, that they actually felt that we're getting along, I think, better than the government on a neighboring planet. The schools of statesmanship have power to start proceedings in the state courts, looking toward the disenfranchisement of any defective, idle, indifferent, or criminal individual. These people recognize that when 50% of a nation is inferior or defective and possesses the ballot, such a nation is doomed. They believe the dominance of mediocrity spells the downfall of any nation. Voting is compulsory, heavy fines being assessed against all who fail to cast their ballots. The racial ideals. The ideals of one generation carve out the channels of destiny for immediate posterity. The quality of the social torchbearers will determine whether civilization goes forward or backward. The homes, churches, and schools of one generation predetermine the character trend of the succeeding generation. The moral and spiritual momentum of a race or a nation largely determines the cultural velocity of that civilization. I'm opening this up for comment for the angels of the nation life. Don't be afraid. P.O.?
Susan, this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
I'm sorry I'm late. I forgot all about you, so I apologize, but you've got a good topic going here.
Thank you.
I think it harmonizes excellently with a current topic on the UAI forum that Rick Warren brought up about mediocrity. So I think it fits very well with harmonizes very well with your topic you picked here. Too much mediocrity is part of a big problem. It relates to a type of government, how well it works, and so on. So mediocrity and general discussions on the UAI forum is recommended.
Thank you, Mark. P.O., I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Susan. Can you drop back to the nation angel slide once more?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, this is the topic, right?
This is the topic, both of these slides. I just had found a few extra quotes that I wanted to share. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to say it's just amazing that our country, our country with this division that's going on now, I just thought that we need this angels of nation life, and we need it now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, P.O. I think we have them now. We do have them, and in my opinion, working with them, what would they ask of us? What would they ask us to do for them to help them? What could make their job easier?
Don't be angry. Be tactful, as Jesus taught us. I mean, both sides are screaming at each other right now, and I understand both sides, and from their perspective, but I think the angels would ask us to dialogue and think in the other person's shoes. That's what I think.
Susan, this is Neil Waldrop. Would you allow me to contribute?
Definitely.
To me, this particular set of purposes exemplifies one of the main issues that I have noticed when I think about the work of the Master Seraphim. We are all of us located in one particular area. We're familiar with our own country, for example. We're familiar with our own society. But the Master Seraphim have to consider the situation in the world at large. And the political or national situation in one country may not have much to do with the political situation in other countries. It seems to me that this paragraph has to do with both the internal development of nations and also the international side. The international side perhaps is a bit more obvious. But one of the great challenges that the Master Seraphim of nation life have to work on relates to the relationship between citizens and the government. Or if you look at it the other way, the tendency in the tradition of those who are in charge to exercise authoritarian or dictatorial control over citizens. Another issue that has been part of human life perhaps since the beginning is the problem of corruption, the tendency of people in power to take money out of the public purse and put it in their own pockets. And then when we consider the idea of a democratic system, one of the elements that few people consider has to do with the involvement of citizens, the willingness to take an active interest. And so, Susan, now perhaps I can say something that might relate to your question. If citizens are entirely passive and do nothing, then they have little reason to be dissatisfied. It takes active involvement of citizens in political matters, even if it is only local, even if it is pertaining to the idea of a public park that is proposed for your city or whatever else. Then the participation of citizens in general can help improve the overall national life in the country where you live. The question of international relations is very complex because there is a relationship between democracy, the willingness to abide by law and rules in a domestic sense, and the trustworthiness of a nation in regard to other nations. So, for example, one of the difficulties we are currently facing in the world is that there are a group of strong countries, especially China and Russia, which are actively opposing the idea of democracy and seeking to shore up and reinforce the tendency of tyranny. Vladimir Putin of Russia is a very clear example of this, and the leader of China, Xi Jinping, has pushed the communist system toward an even more totalitarian framework than it had previously. But again, I think the main point that I'd like to reiterate and reinforce in regard to the angels of nation life is that they are operating for diverse purposes in different locations, and that they need to apply their energies toward encouraging domestic development in a serious way probably is as important as their efforts to improve international relations and reduce the tendency to resort to force when a nation becomes aggrieved or feels threatened.
Thank you, Neil. What is the quote that you always use, that the success of the nation is wrapped up in the individual, or something to that effect?
I can never remember it exactly, but that's what it basically says is, do you not realize that the success of a nation or a better world is connected to the progress and growth of the individual? I'm not very good at pulling out exact quotes, but I think you all remember that one. Mm-hmm. I used to use that one on my email at work. I'd sign my name and have that quote right underneath it. So.
And what you said, Neil, about the corruption, I feel that's one of the biggest obstacles we have to actually achieving a global government right now. And also the lack of participation of citizens, of idealistic and citizens with integrity being involved in government. So if we can move past those two obstacles, I think it's going to be clear sailing to get us a global government. Okay, any other comments?
I'd like to make one comment on the next screen that you had there. Just
okay.
The very last sentence, I think, is important for all of us, and in our what we've chosen as our passion in life for, personal religion, that sort of thing. The moral and spiritual momentum of a race largely determines the cultural velocity of the civilization. I think we need to keep that in mind as, our personal ministry or personal mission with the Urantia Book and disseminating the teachings. We can contribute to that if, the more we do. So.
I think someone needs to mute. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the next group, the angels of the races. The angels of the races, those who work for the conservation of the evolutionary races of time, regardless of their political entanglements and religious groupings. On Urantia, there are remnants of 9 human races which have commingled and combined into the people of modern times. These seraphim are closely associated with the ministry of the race commissioners, and the group now on Urantia is the original core assigned to the planet soon after the day of Pentecost.
Although the prince's staff were limited to natural means and ordinary methods of race improvement, they held out the promise of the Adamic gift of a new race as the goal of subsequent evolutionary growth upon the attainment of the height of biological development. Hybridization of superior and dissimilar stocks is the secret of the creation of new and more vigorous strains. And this is true of plants, animals, and the human species. Hybridization augments vigor and increases fertility. Race mixtures of the average or superior strata of various peoples greatly increase creative potential, as is shown in the present population of the United States of America. Hybridization makes the species improvement because of the role of the dominant genes. Racial intermixture increases the likelihood of a larger number of the desirable dominants being present in the hybrid.
Are there any comments? There were so much material to use for this, but I hope that you all would remember quotes that you would like to contribute. P.O.? You might need to unmute.
Oh, sorry. As a native Korean, I went through my DNA and I found out that I'm from my mother's part, I'm from the Central Asia by the Caucasus, and that was kind of a surprise. And when I came to this country 54 years ago, every nation looked upon the United States as, even the vernacular in Japanese or Chinese, they called USA as the beautiful country. The Japanese called it the rice country. And a lot of these countries looked upon the United States as the country to be. And this last hybridization proves that the United States is a nation of immigrants. And they became the standard bearer and saved Europe twice until our material wealth start getting into the populace and we start slowly losing the spirituality. And when the Revelation was first published in the 50s, I believe this is the start. So, and my nephews and nieces are all hybridization of French Canadian, Scotch Irish, and they are the most beautiful creatures I've ever seen. So I think I can attest to this paragraph.
P.O., I think that the ancestry studies that people and DNA tests that people are doing now are so wonderful. I did it myself, and the Ancestry.com has a brief little video that they did, and it showed a group of people. They were doing the DNA testing. They all came in, they all sat, and talked, and some didn't get along so well. But when the experiment was over and they all came back and had their results of their DNA testing, some found out that they actually were part of the ancestry DNA of groups of people that they thought they hated. And it was a real eye-opener, and it helped everyone realize that we all are family. Even though they don't have the benefit of knowing that we all did come from the same family, like everyone who reads the Urantia book knows. I mean, we're all brothers and sisters from the same family. So
amen to that, Susan. Amen.
Yeah. But it's a thrilling thing. Joy?
Well, far be it from me to criticize the angels, but it seems to me that the angels of the races haven't been doing a very good job. I mean, 100,000 years ago, the orange race was completely wiped out by the green race. with some amalgamation into the green race, but then the green race was wiped out. And so, of course, it might be a new group of angels working in this dispensation, but even so, I've always wondered how it is if there's actually a group of angels protecting the races or trying to work for their conservation. How could it be that entire races got wiped out? So that's my question.
That's an interesting question, Joy. In doing the study for this, I ran across some quotes about that very thing, and it occurs to me that in the days when those races were amalgamated, the plan was we were going toward one amalgamated race. So they were absorbed into and actually strengthened mainly the race that are in Africa and India. Those were actually elements that they preserved through being amalgamated. So I do believe that they're doing their best to preserve superior qualities, but they do say that when superior qualities are combined, they produce even more superior qualities. So we may not see exactly what's happening behind the scenes, but I think that they are actually putting people together. I really believe that to preserve these great qualities in the races. And just because Adam and Eve weren't successful, the racial amalgamation didn't occur, but I'm not sure that it might not occur in the future. So it needs to be done selectively and carefully, I think, and we don't really have a visible world leader showing us the way on this, but I think they're working behind the scenes. I really do believe they are. Any other comments on that?
Steve raised his hand.
Can you hear me? Anyone? Hi.
Yes.
Well, in response to what Joy said, you know, it's very simple. It's tragic. It's beautiful at the same time, but nobody interferes with our free will, not even God. The angels might be doing a magnificent job, but if people are bent on warfare, because we got our weapons long before a normal planet does. We learned how to kill each other millennia before a normal planet evolves and receives the technological grace to create weapons as we now have. So, yeah, the angels are doing fine. They're not allowed. They can manipulate the clouds, maybe cause fog. I mean, you know, I don't know what they do, but they make it very clear they don't interfere with free will. Not even God does that.
Thank you, Steve. Agnes?
Well, what I understand about the angels is that they organize and manipulate situations for us to grow. And so it's not just the work of the angels, we are partnership with the angels. So it's very nice to see that there are 12 different categories of angels, and that when we work, for me, for example, education is very important. So I know that they are helping me, but they are just organizing situations. And as Steve just said, my free will, am I going to work with them or not work with them? What I also heard about the angels through the Urantia book is that they, the thought adjusters, they've got nothing to, they don't have to say, to prove anything to anybody. They do the perfect job. But the angels, they're a little bit like us. They have to respond to whatever they have done and why they have failed in such situation. So I think that it is a nice opportunity, Susan, that you give us to reconsider the way we can be partnership with angels in our lives, and are we going to work with them or not work with them, because they're just putting up situations. It's said in the book that it doesn't seem that the thought adjuster and the angels work together, but it's not really clearly said in the book, but it looks as if they do work together. So I think that for our own growth, they really put, because they can manipulate material life, so they really put the circumstances, the best circumstances that can enable us to grow. And I've been reading about, I think is the guardian angel, because it was very difficult for me to take decisions, because I was always saying, yes, but if I let go to that, maybe that was the best way. And so I was a little bit in stagnation. And when I read about the guardian angel, who is waiting for me to take a decision, and he's going to put everything after my decision, organize the situation to make me grow, whatever my decision is, I said, wow, what a partnership with him. I'm very touched by, he is there or whatever. They are there to help us grow. And so they're our friends. They are our friends. And well, that's what I wanted to share about that. And whatever the race is, well, I had something to say about before as well. It's all our own business. Are we aware that we can work with them and that they are there for our growth, and therefore that we have to stay aware about everything what's happening around us, because they are the instruments, well, they are the ones who put us in situations of growing, and that partnership is, if we grow, they grow. They've got something to gain through that. We've got something to gain, and they've got something to gain. So it's a win-win situation.
Yes, it is.
Well said.
Thank you, Agnes. And I think that there may be times when we have our own ideas about how the things should progress on our planet, but I encourage everyone to be open to the wisdom of the angels as they show us with their superior wisdom the direction that we should go. And I know that our willingness consciously will help us be trained unconsciously or super consciously by our adjuster. And I thought I saw a comment or a hand up. Was there someone? Oh, Belen. Belen, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, you can unmute her. Yeah.
I think there, I've got you unmuted. Did that work?
Yes.
Belen?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was just saying that the previous slide said statements regarding the religious challenge of this age is to those far-seeing and forward-looking men and women of spiritual insight who will dare to construct a new and appealing philosophy of living out of the enlarged and exquisitely integrated modern concepts of cosmic truth, universe beauty, and divine goodness. So as Agnes was saying, this is a partnership with us, the forward-looking men and women of spiritual insight, and our angels co-creating, daring us to construct a new and appealing philosophy, daring us to create situations or ministry or ideas or concretize these new ideas into enlarged, integrated modern concepts of cosmic truth and universe beauty and divine goodness. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Belen. Rick just realized that we're running to just 1/2 hour left. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to go forward to our next group.
Yes.
I won't rush through it, but
Yeah. Angels of the future. These are the projection angels who forecast a future age and plan for the realization of the better things of a new and advancing dispensation. They are the architects of the successive eras. The group now on planet has functioned since the beginning of the current dispensation.
Social changes. Society is not a divine institution. It is a phenomenon excuse me, of progressive evolution. An advancing civilization is always delayed when its leaders are slow in making those changes in social organization which are essential to keeping pace with the scientific developments of the age. For all that, things must not be despised just because they are old. Neither should an idea be unconditionally embraced just because it is novel and new. Unspiritual animals know only the past and live in the present. Spirit-indwelt man has powers of prevision, insight. He may visualize the future. Only forward-looking and progressive attitudes are personally real. Static ethics and traditional morality are just slightly superanimal. Nor is Stoicism a high order of self-realization. Ethics and morals become truly human when they are dynamic and progressive, alive with universe reality. The greatest 20th century influences contributing to the furtherance of civilization and the advancement of culture are the marked increase in world travel and the unparalleled improvements in methods of communication.
Any comments?
Well, I think for me, I think what we're doing here today is exactly an example of that, where it says unparalleled improvements in methods of communication. I don't know how many people are on at this moment or how many different countries are represented here, but several. I mean, you know, many of us are thousands of miles away from each other, and yet we're communicating as if we're in the same room together. We have the visual cues from seeing each other, and what a massive improvement that is toward world peace and cultural development and all the things that we're talking about here. So, and then world travel. You know, it fascinates me sometimes the places that, you know, we've gotten to go, and we hear our friends traveling here and there, and people at work say, "Oh yeah, I went to China and went to Japan on vacation, or Europe or wherever." But when I was a kid, you know, going to the Smoky Mountains was, you know, a big adventure. So, but now it's not that uncommon for people to travel to different countries and get to experience different cultures, and that can only lead to the, you know, the progress of our civilization and growth of the culture and all the good things that we're hoping to achieve. So I think that last paragraph is very significant, and what we're doing here today is a fine example of that.
You never hear of anyone coming back from a trip and saying, "Oh, I hated the people there." They always love the culture, the experiences, the people. So it is really true that sharing like this is huge. Any other comments? Okay, we better move on then. The angels of enlightenment. These angels are occupied with mental and moral training as it concerns individuals, families, groups, schools, communities, nations, and whole races. Urantia is now receiving the help of the third corps of seraphim dedicated to the fostering of planetary education. Intellectual cross-fertilization. Brotherhood is impossible in a world whose inhabitants are so primitive that they fail to recognize the folly of unmitigated selfishness. There must occur an exchange of national and racial literature. Each race must become familiar with the thought of all races. Each nation must know the feelings of all nations. Ignorance breeds suspicion, and suspicion is incompatible with the essential attitude of sympathy and love.
The improvement in education has not kept pace with the expanding social structure. Neither has the modern appreciation of ethics developed in correspondence with growth along more purely intellectual and scientific lines. The genius owes something to both his ancestors and his progeny. Likewise is he under obligation to the race, nation, and circumstances of his inventive discoveries. He should also remember that it was as man among men that he labored and wrought out his inventions.
Anyone?
Was it Agnes was talking about how important education was there? Agnes, you want to comment on that one?
Well, it's not really those angels which I'm working with, but you gave me the opportunity to discover that they can help me as well, because education is really important to me. When I see, well, as some of you know, I work in prison, and well, lack of education is very present in that place. And I think that education brings people out of ignorance. And when you get out of ignorance, well, you have the choice. When you haven't education, it's not possible to have a choice. So it is free will in that case. What is it? Because without education, there is no free will. Without a glance of a spiritual life and a glance of what difference between what is morally good and what is not morally good, it's very difficult to. We know that there are important chapters in our way of doing that are related to the use of free will. And so we know that we really have to have the opportunity of seeing a bigger picture to be able to use our free will. So give a book, give books, teach children, teach them in a moral way. I have three grandchildren, and I know that it's a little bit like in a restaurant. They are young, there are 4, 2, those are and one is 6 months old, so I'm not working a lot with her, but with the 2 others, especially with the eldest, well, when she does something, I say, do you like the result of what you have done? And I'm working on her morality, not condemning her because she has made one choice and that choice was not the correct choice, but if we're not there behind them, educating them and saying, you know, it's like in a restaurant. If you go to Italian and you always think that there's just spaghetti, you're going to always take spaghetti. So when a child has an attitude which is not moral, which is not correct, because affects the other person in front, well, it is to suggest that there are other ways of doing. And then letting her decide on what she wants to do and how she's going to repair what she's done. And so for me, that is the most important thing that I can do in education. And so I'm going to refer to them a little bit more now. So thank you, Susan and Rick, for suggesting that. And I'm happy. I've got some more to work with. More angels to work with. I'm sure I'm going to have some more work.
There you go.
Maybe we can have a major and minor niche, right? Very good, Agnes. Anyone else? Okay, let's go on to our next group, the Angels of Health. And I think these folks are making great progress. These are the seraphic ministers assigned to the assistance of those mortal agencies dedicated to the promotion of health and the prevention of disease. The present core is the sixth group to serve during this dispensation. It is to the mind of perfect poise, housed in a body of clean habits, stabilized neural energies, and balanced chemical function. When the physical, mental, and spiritual powers are in triune harmony of development, that a maximum of light and truth can be imparted with a minimal of temporal danger or risk to the real welfare of such a being. By such a balanced growth does man ascend the circles of planetary progression one by one from the seventh to the first.
Those who have received and recognized the indwelling of God have been born of the Spirit. You are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwells in you. It is not enough that this Spirit be poured out upon you. The divine Spirit must dominate and control every phase of human experience. Self-control is better human policy of behavior regulation than is extreme self-denial. Nor did Jesus ever teach these unreasonable views to his followers. Prayer is not a technique for curing real and organic diseases, but it has contributed enormously to the enjoyment of abundant health and to the cure of numerous mental, emotional, and nervous ailments. And even in actual bacterial disease, prayer has many times added to the efficacy of other remedial procedures. Prayer has turned many an irritable and complaining invalid into a paragon of patience and made him an inspiration to all other human sufferers.
Any comments?
Do we have anyone that works in the health field or medical fields?
Pio?
Dr. Park here. Last year, my oldest brother, Peter Park, I call him Spider-Man, contracted third stage lung cancer. He's 78, and we thought it was a death sentence. But one thing that I noticed is I immediately flew down, and my sisters from New York all joined up as a support group. And there was a fellowship person there who runs a gym, a health gym. I should know his name, but Susan Cook introduced me to him, and he taught me that positive mental attitude and a loving support group is the foremost. His wife died of cancer too, and after having learned that, having a teleconference with him for about an hour, we found out that a loving support, and both of my sisters are fundamental Christians, and I, as a UB reader, we surrounded our brother, and we prayed through the week that we were with him, and the end result was he's cancer-free now. We found out that his lymph node was extracted and nothing spread. And all we prayed was he wanted 10 more years because he worked all his life. And I believe that loving support group and a positive mental attitude and a group prayer of like-minded people is very, very important besides the medical technology. I thought I might share that with you.
Thank you, Pio.
Well, thanks for sharing it. I know we heard about your brother, and I'm glad to hear the result, how it all turned out.
It's wonderful.
You know, we were just reading in study group the last couple of weeks about how, was it John took Jesus to a well where there were many sick people and asked him, to cure these people. And instead of actually healing them, he spoke words of comfort and enlightenment to them. And many of them were cured because they, most of their illness was caused by their mental state or emotional difficulties. So, and I think that's what it's saying here, that we can often help with that if we would share the teachings of Jesus and, you know, our own loyalty and knowledge of what Jesus said and how we're supposed to do things.
They referred to it as healing ministry. And that, what you were just talking about, Pio, sounds as though that's exactly what we could call what you did for your brother as a group.
Can I share? Can I share?
Yes, go ahead.
In my personal ministry, I think I'm being encouraged by the angels of health, along with the guidance of Emmett Fox and some of his positive thinking, because I'm quick to tell people that I have been told, I don't know where, but I have been told that if I turn my will and my life over to the care of God, I'll be granted good health and happiness. And I'm quick to tell people I'm happy and I'm healthy. And that's my ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to go to the next group, the Home Seraphim. Urantia now enjoys the services of the fifth group of angelic ministers dedicated to the preservation and advancement of the home, the basic institution of human civilization. While religious, social, and educational institutions are all essential to the survival of cultural civilization, the family is the master civilizer. A child learns most of the essentials of life from his family and the neighbors. When Christian missionaries go into the heart of Africa, where sons and daughters are supposed to remain under the control and direction of their parents throughout the lifetime of the parents, they only bring about confusion and the breakdown of all authority when they seek in a single generation to supplant this practice by teaching that these children should be free from all parental restraint after they have attained the age of 21.
There is an ideal of marriage on the spheres on high. On the capital of each local system, the material sons and daughters of God do portray the height of the ideals of the union of man and woman in the bonds of marriage, and for the purpose of procreating and rearing offspring. After all, the ideal mortal marriage is humanly sacred. The home as a social unit never became a success until the supermen and superwomen of Dalmatia led mankind to love and plan for their grandchildren and their grandchildren's children. Savage man loves his child, but civilized man loves also his grandchild. And modern civilization is at a standstill in spiritual development and the safeguarding of the home institution.
Any comments?
Belen, do you want to speak now?
Previous slides was on the angel of health, because I used to work in the healthcare also. And when I see the organisms under the microscope, it is a beautiful world, the invisible world that could not be seen unless one is in the microscope or compounded microscope. So I could really attest to that our world is both beautiful macroscopically and microscopically. At the same time, when I'm working and I'm helping in diagnosis as a medical technologist, I also always remember that the default of of Adam and Eve for us kind of delayed our progress, in the sense that with these organisms, if we are 100% biologically uplifted, we could have surpassed all these effect of microorganisms to our immune system, for example. And for women, we could have bypassed the birth pain that comes with the deliverance of babies. So I was just kind of reminded of what I was doing before and what I've learned from Urantia Book. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Belen.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go to the next. Somebody needs to mute, I think. The Angels of Industry. This seraphic group is concerned with fostering industrial development and improving economic conditions among the Urantia peoples. This core has been 7 times changed since the bestowal of Michael. And in the Prince's staff, the Commission on Industry and Trade, and this will show you how far we've come since the times when the rebellion happened. This council was employed in fostering industry within the tribes and in promoting trade between the various peace groups. Its leader was Nod. Every form of primitive manufacture was encouraged by this core. They contributed directly to the elevation of standards of living by providing many new commodities to attract the fancy of primitive men. They greatly expanded the trade in the improved salt produced by the Council on Science and Art. FAD sponsored the Dalmatia plan of teaching that was carried out as an industrial school in which the pupils learned by doing, and through which they worked their way by the daily performance of useful tasks. This plan of education did not ignore thinking and feeling and the development of character, but it gave first place to manual training. The instruction was individual and collective. It was among these enlightened groups educated in the Dalmatia schools that the first commercial credit was practiced. From a central exchange of credits, they secured tokens which were accepted in lieu of the actual objects of barter. The world did not improve upon these business methods for hundreds of thousands of years. In my opinion, the Angels of Industry are probably working very, very hard to make sure that people all over the world have just the basic needs, such as water and food and shelter. When we think about the conditions that some people live in, I'm sure that they're very busy working with that. Any other comments? Okay, we'll try to get, we have 2 more groups. The Angels of Diversion. These are the seraphim who foster the values of play, humor, and rest. They ever seek to uplift man's recreational diversions and thus to promote the more profitable utilization of human leisure. The present core is the 3rd of that order to minister on Urantia. When we are tempted to magnify our self-importance, if we stop to contemplate the infinity of the greatness and grandeur of our makers, our own self-glorification becomes sublimely ridiculous, even verging on the humorous. One of the functions of humor is to help all of us take ourselves less seriously. Humor is the divine antidote for exaltation of ego.
Excuse me. Angels do not have material bodies, but they are definite and discrete beings. They are of spirit nature and origin. Though invisible to mortals, they perceive you as you are in the flesh without the aid of transformers or translators. They intellectually understand the mode of mortal life, and they share all of man's non-sensuous emotions and sentiments. They appreciate and greatly enjoy your efforts in music, art, and real humor. They are fully cognizant of your moral struggles and spiritual difficulties. They love human beings, and only good can result from your efforts to understand and love them. Which, thank you, Susan, for bringing this course to us today for that reason. Food, security, pleasure, and leisure provide the foundation for the development of culture and the spread of knowledge. The effort to execute knowledge results in wisdom, and when a culture has learned how to profit and improve by experience, civilization has really arrived. Food, security, and material comfort still dominate society, but many forward-looking individuals are hungering for knowledge and thirsting for wisdom. Every child is provided an opportunity to learn by doing. Education is the watchword of these ages. And education seems to be coming up in almost every one of these categories.
Any comments? The angels of superhuman ministry. These are the angels of the angels, those seraphim who are assigned to the ministry of all other superhuman life on the planet, temporary or permanent. This corps has served since the beginning of the current dispensation. Even as mortals, so have these angels been father to many disappointments. And they will point out that sometimes your most disappointing disappointments have become your greatest blessings. Sometimes the planting of a seed necessitates its death, the death of your fondest hopes, before it can be reborn to bear the fruits of new life and new opportunity. And from them you will learn to suffer less through sorrow and disappointment, first by making fewer personal plans concerning other personalities, and then by accepting your lot when you have faithfully performed your duty.
From them you will learn to let me start over. From them you will learn to let pressure develop stability and certainty, to be faithful and earnest, and withal cheerful, to accept challenges without complaint, and to face difficulties and uncertainties without fear. They will ask, if you fail, will you rise indomitably to try anew? If you succeed, will you maintain a well-balanced poise, a stabilized and spiritual attitude throughout every effort in the long struggle to break the fetters of material inertia to attain the freedom of spirit existence?
Any comments?
I think that one there is interesting, where it says, what would it say to? If you fail, will you rise indomitably to try anew? It reminds me of the saying, you know, if you fall, get back up again, you know.
Mm-hmm. Joy? Okay.
Well, I have a question, actually. Since the Reserve Corps of Destiny mortals like us are assigned to the different angelic corps when, you know, when we meet those requirements, I wonder how in the world mortals would be helping the angels of superhuman ministry.
Is it possible that we can minister to each other who are working with them? I don't know. They serve the other groups. Maybe we can serve if ministry is our passion. Serve, everyone's serving with these groups.
Yeah, maybe.
Just my idea. Anybody else have an answer for that one?
I find that, Susan, I find that I'm serving in so many different ways that the angels of superhuman ministry are helping me. So whatever I do, whatever I am willing to do, you know, this special angel will be helping me.
Lynn, you are involved in a lot of different things. I think of you as one of those overachievers that have like your foot in all of these groups, really, your toe, I should say. But you remind me of that quote where it says you can do many things as easy as one. And so you're an inspiration to me about that, for sure. Anyone else? Janet?
Yeah.
Janet?
Yes. I think this affects almost all of us in our personal life on how we go through life and we hit these challenges. And when you have these challenges, you could be greatly disappointed, brought down to your knees, and then to be able to rise back up, that resiliency of a child of God, of a son of God, to be able to do that as the human on the planet, the Agamdonner, to be able to understand that we are part of the big picture of carrying this evolutionary forward in our own individual life, knowing that you get down, your knees get scraped, and you pick yourself back up because you know there's more. You know you're an eternal. You know that you're an eternal being, and that is an example of the lowest creature in the chain that can act as the highest. And I think they're there to support us in getting up. And one of those quotes that goes when you're on the Havana circuits, you've feasted or fattened on, there's that fabulous quote. And I think, yeah, that one, I don't have it in my grasp, but you know what I'm talking about? This is the beginning stage. This is where you start to fall down and get up. And I think this is a perfect example at this stage of where we're going to be going. It's going to be the normal challenge, and this is the kindergarten of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, Janet, didn't we see the same thing with the apostles? I mean, they would get built up, and then something would take them down, but they would keep coming back and keep coming back.
It made them
And
stronger.
Each time they would learn and grow and get stronger.
That's true. Rick, did you have your hand up? No? Keep seeing that hand. Anyone else? Okay, I've got just a couple of other things here. Have you discovered your niche? We invite you to share with the other attendees what groups or group you are drawn to, who you identify with. These are your kindred spirits. Is your niche a new discovery, or have you always known? Is there a particular service task or cause that you're feeling strongly about at this moment? What will you do now? This might be a time after we're finished today for you to reflect on those questions. How can we more fully cooperate? You can consciously augment, adjust, or harmony by choosing to respond to divine leading, sincerely basing the human life on the highest consciousness of truth, beauty, and goodness, and then coordinating these qualities of divinity through wisdom, worship, faith, and love. Be aware of the opportunities being placed before you. Make a conscious commitment daily to remain open, perceptive, able and willing to do the work that God and the Master Seraphim may provide you with. That is something that Rick and I have realized, that our willingness has brought all kinds of opportunities to us. Actually, we have to choose and pick between what we can do. The work is there for all of us, if we're willing. Pray for wisdom and guidance and patience. And I have to be cautious about warning you to pray for patience, because you'll have reason to be patient. But it is good to pray through these decisions when we're choosing our tasks. Carefully and regularly consider your passions and priorities, reorganize them if necessary, and choose service that you're passionate about or particularly gifted to perform, because that makes it a joy. And that is all I have for you. If you have any comments, now's the time.
Well, I am grateful that you have accepted to do this webinar, and you did it beautifully. And I think that you reminded us that all the angels are there. They're just waiting upon us. So thank you.
Thank you, Len. Okay, well, thank you to Jeannie and the UAI Education Committee for inviting me to present this topic and for designing the lovely poster that she put out and promoting and helping to facilitate the webinar. Jeannie, we love you. Thank you to each person who's attended today, who gave their time and who participated in the discussion. And we hope you've been inspired to serve more effectively. Jeannie, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Susan, Rick. You did a beautiful work, inspiring work, and it is my privilege to serve you and all our fellows. I do this work with love and with all my heart to serve our Father. Thank you. I would like to know if anyone wants to share something else. Let's see. Joy, please, go ahead.
I have one more question, and that is, does anybody have any idea why they, you know, some of the groups of angels are changed more often than others? You understand my question? Like, you know, some have been changed 5 times in this current dispensation, and some have been serving ever since the times of Jesus.
John, you've got
Anyone know why?
John, you've got your hand.
Maybe they just get tired.
It sounds like they stay busy, so that's probably true.
No, seriously, Joy, I don't have any clue why they serve for the terms they serve, but I'm sure there's good reason for it, and I'm sure angels don't get tired, but it's a question to ask when we get to the mansion worlds.
I think Neil was waving. Neil, did you have a comment?
Neil?
Yes, I have thought about this, and we did some analysis of the different frequencies that appears in the study guide that is available on the website of the Committee for the Global Endeavor. My theory, basically just an impression, is that the assignment of a different corps of angels succeeding the one before has to do with the different changes in the domain, in the field that they're working on. That when the domain changes markedly, there are different needs for spiritual development of that domain, that it then becomes reasonable for the spiritual superiors to change the personnel. In my previous background working for the State Department, what I noticed was that after people have been in the same place for a certain number of years, they got a bit stale. They no longer had new and innovative ideas. And even though the Master Seraphim are obviously much more skilled than human beings, I think it is possible, perhaps even probable, that the same principle applies. That when there are fundamental changes in the domain of work, it becomes sensible for a rotation to happen.
Dave, go ahead. You got your hand raised? Okay.
Dave's muted. Hang on, maybe we can unmute him.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know I had my hand raised. That was from 2 or 3 sessions of angels earlier. But I would like to share briefly about home, marriage, family, and home is very important. And we have 5 papers given by a primary seraphim from paradise, who is now active on Urantia as the chief of all angels, chief of seraphim. And she gave us the marriage, home, family papers, 82, 83, 84, and 2 other papers on angels. And note very carefully, in paper 84, the last paragraph, I'll read that. Here's what she says. Let me turn on the light here slightly. Okay. Let man enjoy himself. Let the human race find pleasure in 1,001 ways. Let evolutionary mankind explore all forms of legitimate self-gratification. The fruits of the long up. Am I popping on my microphone?
Yes.
My microphone. I hear popping on my microphone. I don't know.
Yeah, we hear the popping too, Dave, but just go ahead.
I'll talk a little softer maybe. All right, the fruits of the long upward biological struggle. Man has well earned some of its present day joys and pleasures, but look you well to the goal of destiny, exclamation. Pleasures are indeed suicidal if they succeed in destroying property, which has become the institution of self-maintenance. And here's the big one. And self-gratifications have indeed cost a fatal price if they bring about the collapse of marriage, the decadence of family life, and the destruction of the home, man's supreme evolutionary requirement, and civilization's only hope of survival. And that is an ominous warning. We're going through that right now. It's very critical. So I just want to bring that up. It's highly important in my view. I've been doing this 43 years, and that's one of my top priorities is home, family.
And well, it should be for all of us, Dave.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Jeannie, you want to go ahead?
Would you like Susan to say some words to close this session? Please go ahead.
Just that I really enjoyed everyone being here today and getting to know some of you even better, some that I hadn't even met before. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Susan.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Susan, for this wonderful session. God bless you all. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Bless you all. Have a blessed day.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you. Susan, it will be possible to have your presentation to share with Belen was asking to it.
Yes, I can do that. I think it can be emailed. I hope it's not too big, but yes, we'll definitely try to get it to her.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. God bless you.
Love you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.